Hey everybody, welcome to HomeRecordingMadeEasy.com, and on behalf of Studio One Expert, I want to welcome you to the Beginner's Guide to Learning Presonus Studio One version 3. In these short videos throughout this series, I'm going to show you how to get up and running in Studio One with no fuss and no muss, whether you are brand new to Studio One coming from a different DAW, or whether this is the first time you've had any experience with any digital audio workstation. This series is intended to kind of give you the basic foundation so you can start creating music quickly in your home studio. So in this video, we're going to take a look again at our edit screen here, and we're going to continue on and pick up where we left off the last time. We're going to take a look at some of our toolbars at the top here and kind of walk you through part of the edit screen here. So at the very top here, if you look at the top, we have all our toolbars here. So let's take a look at our different tools. So the first thing you'll see is this little bracket tool, and this little bracket tool, when you enable it, will engage what is now called the arrow tool, the smart arrow tool, which is something that's new in Studio One version 3.2, where they're kind of tipping the hat a little bit to the Pro Tools Smart Tool, which is something that a lot of Pro Tools users really loved, as I did. And as we moved over to Studio One, we were asking Presonus to create something like a smart tool, and this is very similar to that. So when you click on this bracket here, you're going to engage the smart tool, and what that's going to allow you to do is when you come over to an event, and let's just highlight this event here, depending on where you hover your cursor over the event will change the tool. So over here, if you go towards the top half of the tool, you'll see that it changes to the range tool, and I can just left click and I can just choose different sections of my audio. If I scroll down here towards the bottom, it goes to the arrow tool again, okay? And if I come over to the edges of the event, you can see it changes to my arrow tool, and I can do my fade ins and my fade outs, okay, which is really cool. So you don't have to switch back and forth between the range tool and the arrow tool. It's just by where you move your cursor on the event itself. Now, if you want to turn that off, if you don't like that, if that's a little too confusing and you just want to do things manually, you can always click on this bracket, and now what you have available to you right now is the arrow tool. As you can see, it stays the arrow tool regardless of where you hover over the event. And if you want to change the tool, you can drop down this drop down arrow, and you can change it from this list here. If you want to go the range, split, eraser, paint tool, mute tool, so on and so forth. Or you can just go over here and you can see those same tools to the right of the arrow tool. Or you can just use your hotkeys or your shortcuts, which in Studio One would be number 1, the numeral 1 on your keyboard will be the arrow tool. The 2 will be the range tool. The 3 will be the blade tool. You can see the arrows changing tools. The 4 is the eraser tool. Number 5 is the paint tool. The 6 is the mute tool. The 7 is the bend tool. And the number 8 is the listen tool, which is the same as all the way across here. So as I hit those numbers on my keyboard, I'm hitting number 1 now, you can see it changes to the arrow tool. And if I hit number 2, it's changing to the range tool, number 3, number 4, so on and so forth. So that's how those are the groups of tools. Now, how you use those tools, I urge you to experiment and go read the manual, or just click around and try to figure out how to use the tools themselves. That's not what this video is about, but this is the different set of tools. Okay. Now, once you get beyond the listen tool and you come over to this question mark, if you're new to Studio One, or even if you're not new, because I keep this on all the time, this is a nice, what they call the information view, or the info view. And when you do that, you can see that right here up in this area here, you'll see wherever I hover my mouse pointer, you can see the information changes. It tells you what you're hovering over. So in this particular case, I'm hovering over the enable the snap to record notes to the rhythmic value set by the quantize parameter. Okay, you can see that here. Move this over a little right here. Okay, if I hover over here, you can see that this is the show and hide automation. Over here is the marker track. Okay, so this is really good, especially if you're brand new, to keep this info tool on, so you'll always know what, it'll help you guide you through what are you clicking on and what do these tools do. Okay, so that's important. Over here we have the audio bend tool. We have over next to this, we have the strip silence tool, and then we have the quantize tool. Again, we'll use all these tools in different videos. Over here is our macro toolbar. Now our macro toolbar you have to download that extra. It's a free download in the extensions part of the browser to get the macro toolbar, and underneath here you'll see all the different macros I have. And again, we'll do a whole video just on the macro toolbar, but this is the macro toolbar icon. If I click this, the toolbar goes away. I click it again, and you can see all the different macros that I've created. They have a bunch of standard ones that come with the macro toolbar that was created by Presonus, and then you can also customize it, which I did here, and this will enhance your workflow tremendously. So stay tuned for the macro toolbar video in future videos. Next to that, we have our enable quantizing parameter here, and then we can change the value of our quantizing right here by choosing different musical increments here. We'll keep it on 16ths for now. Here again is another place where you can change the way the timeline reads. We talked about in the last video here, where you can change it to samples, and you can see over here it changes, or you can change it to bars, or if you're working with video, you can change it to frames. I typically like to keep it on seconds. And again, if you remember from the last video, if you just come over to the timeline and right click and go to time base, you can do the same thing. So what's great about Studio One is there's multiple ways to do the same thing depending on what you prefer. Over here we have our snapping tool. We can snap it again, adaptive, by bars, by quantize, by frames, snap to the grid, snap to the events. This is all different ways that this oops, change it back. That the timeline here, the playhead, will snap to different parts of the grid of the events depending on how you have this set. I typically keep it on adaptive. Okay, and then over here, this is our snap on and off. So if we want to snap, and you can, by enabling it, you can see when I move the events, you can see it kind of snaps to the nearest measure here. If I turn this off, then it's kind of free flowing and it doesn't snap to the grid. Okay. So I usually keep this on, especially when I'm working with things like MIDI. I always like to keep things to the grid. And then this is where it will change the auto scroll of the playhead. If you turn this off, then as the playhead moves to the right here, the screen will not scroll. If you turn it on, the screen will follow the playhead. Okay, and then over here we have the cursor follows the edit position. If you turn this on, depending on I don't usually keep this on. Yeah, so if I click and I edit something here, if I use the blade tool and I cut this event, you see the playhead snapped back to where I made that cut. We do a Command Z to undo that. So again, if I turn this off and I say take that blade tool and cut the event, the playhead doesn't snap to it. Okay, so if the playhead was here and I make a cut, it doesn't snap to it. I'll do a Command Z to undo that. If I were to turn this on, okay, and you can see where the playhead is here. If I cut, you'll see the playhead will snap to that cut. So that could be useful depending on your workflow and what you like to do. Again, I typically don't use that, but it's a tool there for you. Okay, here's our scratch pad, which again, I don't really use that much, but this is a great songwriting tool, and we will do a full video on the scratch pad in another time, but you can always read the manual or go online or even go back to Studio One Expert. I'm sure someone has a video on how to use the scratch pad. And then over here, we have, we can add a scratch pad. This is to turn the scratch pad on and off. And then over here is to add a video player if you're working with video. So that's all our tools at the top here. And then again, across the top, you can go back to the start page by clicking on this button, or go back to our song page, or if we had a project open, we would click this and it would bring us to the project page. So that is the toolbar in a nutshell and some of the basic features and how the toolbar works. Be sure to come back for the next video and we'll take a look maybe at a different part of the edit screen, try to keep these videos short. So for more tips, tricks, concepts, training, and techniques around everything home recording, be sure to head out to homerecordingmadeeasy.com, and also make sure to stop by StudioOneExpert.com on a very frequent basis, because we'll be adding more videos to this series as time goes on, plus everything you ever wanted to know about Studio One. It's probably the best resource online for Studio One is StudioOneExpert.com. So until next time, this has been David Vignola with HomeRecordingMadeEasy.com, and I will talk to you all soon. Take care.